Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your time so far at the conference. I apologize that I couldn't be there in person due to circumstances beyond my control. But I'm happy that I have the opportunity to still go ahead and talk about the 101 ways to MVP your product or your service. The goal is, how are you able to test your ideas before you build, before you make any tangible financial investment in your ideas? How to be sure that to a very large extent there is a business here, because there is a misconception that people have about technology or tech or building tech startups in general. At the end of the day, it is a business. However, it is in the tech space. And when you talk about building a business or being entrepreneurial, you have to ensure that there is a problem you are solving, there is value you are putting on the table, and you as the business person are getting some kind of compensation for delivering that value and solving a problem. Before we go ahead, I'll quickly do a bit of introduction about myself. I'm Jenifer Daniel and I'm the founder of SASI, and our goal is to get more African women into tech entrepreneurship specifically. And today, that's what I'm going to talk about. One of the very first stages, early stages of becoming a tech entrepreneur. After you've gotten your world-changing idea, continental changing idea, the next step is to test whether there is truly something there. There's essence in your idea. And like I said, the goal is for you to test and not build everything at once, because people have this notion that if I build it, people will come, and it's a lie. I can tell you from the research that this doesn't work. This is not always the best way to go about it. You want to test your idea before you go ahead and make tangible investment into that idea, whether it's your time, whether it's your finances, whether it's investing relationships into that business. You want to test that it is viable and it solves a problem. So what exactly is an MVP? An MVP, which is a minimum viable product, is the simplest way you can prove that your idea solves a real problem. And thankfully, on the continent, there are so many problems that need to be solved. Africa has that opportunity to skip and jump and fly into the fourth industrial revolution, right? Yes, we still need infrastructure. All of those need to happen to back our fourth industrial revolution. But we have women like you listening to me today that can definitely push for the change that we want to see in our society, the change that we want to see in Africa, the growth, the civilization, the technologicalization of the continent. And for that to happen, our solutions need to solve real problems, whether it is in manufacturing, whether it's in deep tech, whether it's in agri-tech, edu-tech, whatever space it is, it has to be problems that are affecting us in our villages, in our cities, in our towns, in our states, in our provinces, and in our countries, and most importantly, on the African continent. You need to make sure that your idea is addressing a real problem. What an MVP will also help you do is to validate but not pursue perfection. And just as I started with, you want to validate that the solution you are bringing to that problem can work to a very large extent. It doesn't have to be 100%, but you want to validate that, okay, this solution, this idea truly addresses the pain point, right? The pain point of the problem that I have seen in my society. I'm going to also share with you some very popular examples of MVPs. And I wish I was there with you, because there's an exercise that I would have loved for us to do, but we'll make it work. Here I've written the Dropbox MVP, and most recently Fireflies. Fireflies is an AI note taker, and I read about the MVP. I also read about Reddit. If you know Reddit, Reddit is a forum, a platform where people go there to ask questions and give answers. And the founder of Reddit was also talking about how the very first users of that platform were fake users. They were users from within the organization. And so it was just us trying to test that we have something viable here. They were trying to validate whatever problem it is that they were trying to solve. There are quite a lot of myths when it comes to what an MVP should look like. People believe that you have to build a software, especially if you're even building an idea in the fintech space. People think that, especially for fintech, there has to be a software. But it's not always the case. In most instances, yes, you need to have some form of software, but not always the case. If you're building a loan app for a particular niche, you can begin with an Excel sheet and a WhatsApp group. And I'm telling you, because it is something that I have done when I worked with an organization that was trying to build a bank. And right now, they've grown into something that has been licensed by the government, and they are serving hundreds of businesses. And they began with an Excel sheet and a WhatsApp group, right? So that's a fintech platform. It doesn't always have to be a software. So my challenge to you all today is, how creative can you be? And Africans are very creative. We know how to solve problems our own way, right? And so how can you bring that creativity that we have in other aspects of our lives? How can we bring that into the tech space, where we do not need to build a software? We just need to validate that our solution or our idea is addressing a problem. It doesn't have to be polished. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you don't have to do your MVP for investors. I know there's a wave going through the continent about the need to make sure everything looks prim, proper, for investors. And when I hear people talk about an MVP and they want it to be ready for investors, I'm also tempted to ask, are you building the product or the service or the business to address a need, to address an issue, to address a problem? Or are you building it because you just want to make money? And if you are building solutions just for the sake of making money, you will have problems in the long run. The entrepreneurs that truly change the world, which I hope will be all of you listening to me, are those ones that focus solely on eliminating a problem that they have found in society, and then money comes as a byproduct of it. So if you're building your MVP to the word will be to pander to investors, then I think that is a problem and it's going to cause a lot of challenge for you. The truth is, you can definitely test your product, your service, your idea without technology. You can test it just by speaking to people. It just has to work enough to address that problem. But most importantly, the reason why you are building an MVP is because you want to learn more about the problem and the solution that you are addressing. This is a very popular image on the right, and it talks about how people think that MVPs should be created. But that's not the right way to create an MVP. As we've discussed already, you can see in the lower part of the image, you start as a skateboard and then it goes on to become a tricycle, and then it becomes a motorcycle and then a vehicle, right? That's actually how you build an MVP. At each point, if the goal of this MVP is movement, you can definitely move with a skateboard. You can move with a tricycle. But at each stage, you add an element to it. So you find out that by the time you get to the motorcycle, there's a chair, there's comfort that's been added to it. By the time it becomes a vehicle, extra comfort, probably navigation, air conditioning, you can a boot, a car boot has been added. So you find that there's more of this accessorization of the MVP, and that's the best way to build. In my space, in the work I've done with people, one of the major reasons that MVPs fail is that founders tend to skip validation and they just build based on assumptions, right? And so what that leads to is that you spend all your funds that you have, maybe your savings or money that you've managed to collect from family and friends, on software development. Your MVP is not about you building a mini product. You're just learning about your problem, about the solution you're preferring as cheaply as possible. Please take the time to come up with the craziest MVP for a business that does a dog wedding startup. I would have loved to be there, but this would open your mind up, make you more creative in how you think about solutions. Now, the title of this session is 101 Ways to MVP. And so there are hundreds of ways that you can MVP whatever idea you have or product or service. And I've tried my best to categorize them. The first category we have here is non-product tests. So landing pages where you capture the email of people, social media ads or posts. You want to see who clicks, who comments on it, who shares. You could set up a waiting list. Maybe it's a newsletter. You could also pre-sell before you build the product. Depending on who buys it, you would know whether there is a market there. You could carry out surveys or interview people. You could do crowdfunding campaigns. And just like Dropbox, you can create an explainer video for people who are interested. Remember, you can do a combination of these tests or just one of it. There are also simple digital tests. You can have no-code prototypes. Thankfully, with AI today, you have Lovable, you have Bubble, Webflow, Glide. There's so many of them. I think even today, Claude and ChatGPT can help you with no-code prototypes. There's also Figma clickable designs. You could have a WhatsApp order system, which is very much automated for a continent like ours, where WhatsApp is such a big part of our lives. You could do WhatsApp. to test your idea. You could also do a manual back end where you have Google Sheets and Zapier, or if this then that, as the solution to testing your idea. You could also have a concierge MVP where you actually do the thing by hand, but people think that you are doing it, but that it's tech doing it, but it's you doing it. And there are so many examples of that. Then there's the in real life hacks where you could create pop-up stands. So you go to conferences, you go to events, and you just have a stall there where you just talk to people in that space. You could test at fairs or at markets. You can host small events, small dinners. You can even offer a workshop. So if you have an idea for something, you can offer a workshop to teach people about that solution that you have. And depending on the turnout, you would know that there is a market there. Then there are product alternatives. So you could use an existing tool and just white label it and have it to solve the problem that you are addressing. You can buy ads to drive to a similar product, to drive traffic to a similar product. And then you can test that this thing works by using channels that exist already from partners. If you want to conduct validation, you can do a fake door test where you have a button on your website that says get started, and we've not launched the product yet, give us your email, and when we launch it we'll let you know. I remember earlier in the 2000s or the late 2000s when Jumia was beginning to have a marketplace, and they wanted people to sign up to sell in different cities they had not launched. They would tell you to sign up, and when Jumia marketplace launched in that city, you would get information about that. You can definitely have coming soon campaigns, whether on social media or in a newsletter or on a website. You can offer 50% discount to the first 10 people and then see. It's just like gauging the market, who is willing to pay and who is willing to respond. Then you have validation interviews where you actually go out and you talk to people. I hope these slides will be shared with everyone, but there are examples here. For example, Dropbox used an explainer video to test their product. Airbnb used a manual service technique. Zappos used a concierge model. Instagram, which was called Bourbon, they did a feature test. They already had this app, but they found out that the picture, which is just a feature of the product, was receiving more attention. And then Groupon, Uber, they did a basic app, very basic app, which, like I said, we can do today with no code tools. And then we had Tinder, we had Glossier, and Rent the Runway. I love the Rent the Runway story, and I hope you can go on YouTube and explore yourself to hear that story about how they just tested on campus. So if I was there, which I'm not, and I'm so angry, but I would have loved for you to pick an idea, and then we as a group just go through what creative ways we could have tested those MVP ideas and hear from our fellow participants in the workshop what they would have thought about it. This is my MVP canvas. It's a very simple canvas. It's just what idea you have. We put down our target users, we put down what problem, and then what approaches we want to use to test the idea. And what is it especially that we would use as a success signal to say that, okay, truly, there's something here for us. Please go ahead and share your MVP with your fellow participants and let's have your feedback. But most importantly, I want to remind you that the whole point of this conversation today was just to have you test before you build. Let your creativity flow. I remember, I think Musiyiwa, Strive Musiyiwa, when he was building Econet, the mobile network in the early days, and he was building it in Nigeria. When he was in Nigeria building it, he used to have his staff get on the bus and make phone calls, and fake phone calls actually. And so people in the bus would be like, "What's happening? Are you having a phone call?" Or, and people will be so curious, and then they will ask the staff questions. And so those staff will go to and fro on bus trips, the same routes, just making fake phone calls. So you have to do whatever it takes. That hunger has to be there for you to learn so much about your product, your service, what you're trying to resolve, what solution you're trying to put into the world. And as women, I really want you to not feel embarrassed about what you are doing and what your MVP looks like, because I truly wish I was there to see your faces. Apart from building a product, I really want you as the entrepreneur to build up yourselves, to see yourselves as problem solvers, as founders, as people that have a place in the world, as people that want to change the way things are happening, the way things run on the continent right now. And women that want to do this through business. And not just any kind of business. You want to do it through scientific, technological business. Right? That's what I would have told you to your faces. Right? So please do not for any moment be embarrassed by the way your MVP looks. Because Reid Hoffman has told us that if you're not embarrassed by your MVP, it means you have waited too long to get it out into the world. You can just go ahead and do things shamelessly. As a founder, as an entrepreneur, you cannot have shame. It's not allowed. Okay? So I hope you can keep in touch with SASSY, which is my organization, through social media and through our website. I would love to get in touch and just hear from you guys. But there is an appendix where I have compiled all the various ways that you can MVP. But these are already known ways. What I expect from all of you is creative ways, because only you truly understands your society. Only you truly understands your plan, your idea, your vision. And I want you to keep an open mind as to how your vision can come to life. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.